Hey everybody, Mike Naso here from IPR365.com and PodWeather.com with the latest on the tropics. And Hurricane Bill continues to be the main feature in the Atlantic Basin. There's the visible satellite of the Atlantic, and clearly our major Hurricane Bill, continuing on off towards the northwest and is expected to make that turn finally to the north and the northeast in the next few days. But near the pathway of this hurricane is the island of Bermuda there, highlighted in yellow, and that could be feeling some heavy effects as it already appears to be having, as we have some buoys out in this region that are recording very, very high waves and very, very gusty winds with this very dangerous hurricane, the first hurricane of the 2009 Atlantic hurricane season, at this hour, at this point in time. Now, the latest on Hurricane Bill as of 11 a.m. Eastern, it was at 27.6 north, 66.3 west. Winds were 115, gusting to 140. It was looking very weak this morning, but it's made a comeback, so it may start to strengthen just a little bit more, maybe get back up towards 125, 130 before getting back down again towards Category 2 over the next few days. It's moving northwest at 18, very fast, 958 millibars. Had been down 951 earlier today, so it has been weakening a bit as mentioned. And that track is still expected to be continuing to the northwest tonight, north-northwest overnight, and then north by tomorrow, and then making that turn to the northeast, and then eventually the east-northeast, well out here in the North Atlantic, and not being a feature that we're going to have to concern ourselves with anymore. Although it is going to continue to have high swells propagating, 15-foot waves potentially on the Outer Banks and New England here, even down towards the Bahamas and certainly Bermuda. You will be dealing with very, very intense convection as this storm continues to progress towards that general area over the next, say, 24 hours, as they're already feeling the effects of it. You can see that even better on the visible satellite imagery. There's the eye of the hurricane, and again, it's centered now just to the south of south-south-west now of Bermuda, continuing on off towards the northwest very quickly, expected to make that turn right between Bermuda and the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So we got lucky with this one. Although Bermuda, you're not quite out of the woods yet. It could still come closer to you than anticipated, and until it passes your general longitude latitude here, you'll still have to be concerned with the chance that it could always curve back faster, and that right side would be a lot closer to you. Right now, you could see it is a large and dangerous Category 3 hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. Now, as I mentioned, it is large, and there's the wind field, and the hurricane force winds extend out a good deal from the center. Those are the tropical storm force winds, not yet on the island of Bermuda, but if it continues in this direction, there is a good chance you will get scraped by them, although if it moves a little bit more westerly, maybe you'll get out of them a little bit, but that won't stop the high swells and the heavy seas from impacting you. Now there's the infrared satellite imagery. The hurricane continues to have a ragged donut appearance as it has the last few days, despite being a major hurricane, and it has a lot of high cloud here heading on off towards the direction that the upper level winds want to take it, which is directly in this direction here towards the northwest, north-northwest, and eventually towards the north. And we're going to have to deal with it in that situation there. Now here's the model guidance, all in good agreement that Hurricane Bill is going to continue. Very, very good agreement, right like that. Midway between Bermuda and North Carolina, as I mentioned before, although the continued motion, if it continued that in 2 days, it would make landfall in New Jersey. Thankfully for New Jersey, it's going to make that turn because we do have a sharp trough coming in, a long wave trough, and it's rather unusual, but we've seen it before. You can see it there on the water vapor. There's the hurricane approaching, and as the hurricane approaches, this trough is coming in like that, and we're going to get that turn right there that's going to turn this thing out to sea, but we are still going to have very high swells from it along the eastern seaboard of the United States. Now, as far as the intensity of Bill is concerned, it is moving towards some warmer waters right now, and there is the opportunity for strengthening. Satellite does indicate that it might be getting a little bit better organized. However, as it makes that turn, wind shear will increase, and it'll get into cooler and cooler waters up here, and eventually, it looks like become extratropical, so we won't have to deal with it. There's the wind shear profile. You can see the pattern around the hurricane, very high wind shear around it, low wind shear over the top of it, which is why it's starting to look a little bit better on satellite, and that's why we got to watch it so very carefully. Now, off the coast of Africa, we are watching 3 seedlings here, one over Africa and 2 over water, and these 2 are looking very impressive today. A lot of moisture. Note the lack of dry air coming off the coast. There's the infrared looking good. There's the visible, and both of the ones that have come off shore here, they both have that little curvature to it. And the Canadian model here does show after Hurricane Bill moves up, we're going to get a second system coming in that actually becomes a very, very dangerous hurricane and begins to make an approach right towards the Bahamas and Florida. And you can see the pattern with this would be up and over like this, and we would have a very favorable setup for a potential landfall on the southeast coast. So if that does progress, we're going to have to watch it very carefully, and it shows yet again another system actually here off Africa, probably heading a little bit more north, but still we're going to have to watch these because if it does develop into something, as this model shows, we could once again have a powerful hurricane on our hands. Too early to say quite at this point. In the eastern Pacific, we are dealing with the intertropical convergence zone out here, and we do have this one feature right in here that is looking a bit better as an invest, expected to continue off towards the west, towards the central Pacific, and you can see that even better on the visible satellite imagery. Looks like it's getting a bit circular here, so could this be Hilda? Well, it'll be a race for names, because if it gets into the central Pacific, it will get one off that name list, and wouldn't be named in the eastern Pacific, but it's still got a little ways to go, and if it moves slowly enough and organizes quick enough, we could get a tropical storm from that. In the western Pacific, we still have Typhoon Vamco, which was at 21.2 north, 156.7 east. Winds were 130, gusting to 160, right on the edge of Category 4 intensity. It's moving north at 9, still very weak steering currents, but it's moving faster than it was before. But this has been about 3 days. Thank goodness this wasn't sitting over the Philippines, because then we'd be talking about a catastrophic flood event, expected to become a Category 4 and then weaken and eventually start to move on out. But at this point, we're talking about Tuesday, so we still have a lot of time to deal with Vamco. And looking at the visible satellite imagery as the sun went down, you could see right there that pinhole eye just starting to bubble. So this is likely, based on that satellite imagery, up towards I'd say 145 miles an hour probably, if it continues to blossom the way it is. So again, a very impressive little typhoon, not moving a whole lot, continuing to just spin there in the western Pacific. Well, that's the latest on Hurricane Bill as well as Typhoon Vamco in the western Pacific. Keep an eye on the tropics. Within the next week, we could see Danny develop somewhere in the Atlantic.